Welcome to the REI Hacker Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of real estate success. Join us as we dive into the journeys of top investors, mentors, and industry experts. And now, let's hand it off to our host, Benson Juarez.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you being here on this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. Excited for our next guest. You guys might recognize him. His name is Anthony Simonie. He was on with me about a month ago, and we were talking about his business and everything that he's involved with, and we started to really get in the weeds with the topics of marketing and fundraising and creating funnels and all kinds of different strategies, and we ran out of time. And so Anthony was nice enough to come back. Thank you for being here again, man. To talk more about the strategy, because this podcast is, we want to introduce you to new people, we want to inspire you, but an hour usually isn't enough time to do that and also get into the weeds and strategy and give you some things that you can actually leave with and start implementing in your business right away. So that's why Anthony came back. So thanks for being here. When we were wrapping up the last time, we were starting to talk about LinkedIn, talking about creating funnels. Most importantly, this was around the concept of fundraising, right? And for people that are out there who maybe are just getting started, the concept of fundraising might feel like it's really far away or something that is difficult to overcome, because who's going to give you money, right? Who's just going to walk up and give you a check and walk away, right? So we're going to talk about, who fundraises, why would they fundraise, and some different strategies in doing that, right? So Anthony, again, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
No, it's good. It's an honor to be back. I had a good time last time, and as you know, you and I have lots of synergies, lots of alignment in values and how we want to serve folks. So yeah, it's good to be back. I'm excited about this episode.
Yeah. So who would fundraise, right? A lot of the people that are just getting started maybe are starting off with wholesale, right? Because there's not a lot of skin in the game. They don't have a lot of resources. They're just learning. They're just kind of feeling out the system and see if it makes sense for them. Why would they fundraise? Someone like that, would they even need to raise money?
Yeah, I think it depends on how you want to run your business. I think there's a lot of folks when they get into real estate investing, and wholesaling is the obvious first choice, right? Because you can go out and you can make a good amount of money. And then as you get more experience, you start learning about other ways to sort of stack the deck in your favor, right? So it's like, yes, I can go out and I can get these deals and I can make these huge pops of revenue, but there's also other ways to be able to leverage different methods of real estate investing. And a lot of them involve being able to raise money, right? And what you also find is that if you're able to raise money, you get lots of deal flow, right? Because everybody's looking for money. I don't care who you are in the real estate game. Everybody can always use more money, private money, there's a lot of people right now that they've got retirement accounts. They've got money that's stored away in IRAs or 401ks. They don't even realize that you can tap into those and leverage those for real estate investing. And so what a lot of folks are doing right now, the savvy ones, is they're now creating conversations with those types of people that have those retirement accounts and teaching them about this topic, because those folks, as you know, especially over the past, call it 4 to 6 years, they've been very, very weary about what's happening to their money as it's stored away. So they want to have more control over what's going on with their retirement funds, because the last thing they want is to how do they say, if they want to have more money at the end of the retirement instead of more retirement at the end of their money, right? So it's important to sort of take more control, and more people are waking up to that. So yeah, with wholesalers, I think wholesaling is a great method. There's a lot of money to be made. You and I both have friends who made lots of money doing wholesaling and have our own experiences and that kind of stuff. But it all comes down to how you want to run your business, but you can't ever go wrong for learning how to raise money. Raising money is a fundamental asset in real estate investing that if you learn to do it and you can do it well, you'll never have a problem with deal flow. Everybody be reaching out to you with deals.
Yeah. It's the two sides of the coin, right? The supply and the demand. But and I only brought up wholesalers because there's people in the audience who think, oh, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
But even if you are just starting off, this concept of fundraising and the sales process around it, they're fundamental skill sets that will help you regardless of where your career ends up. And so if you can get good at the sales and the marketing and the fundraising aspect of this business, you'll never be left without a deal or with the resources to close the deal.
Yeah.
So even
One,
if you're a wholesaler, you might just need money for an earnest money deposit. It might be $1,000 that you don't have liquid enough. Or maybe you got 1,000, but you don't want to spend your own money to lock up a deal because it might be your last $1,000, right? So even someone as new as a wholesaler, obviously fix and flippers, right? You need money to lock a deal up. A lot of hard money lenders will require liquidity, cash in the bank to be able to lend you that high interest loan that they want to give you. So fix and flippers, people who are buying rental properties. You can only have so many rental properties in your portfolio before you can't go out and get a loan from a conventional bank. I don't know what the number is, but it's like around 10 or something like that, right?
Yep. Yep. You're limited nonetheless. There's a limit.
There's a limit, right? So you got to think about, well, early on, even before you need it. And this is what a lot of fundraisers tell me is like, start raising money before you need it.
Oh, 100%.
Because you don't want to be out there raising money when you need it, because then you're going to come off desperate and that oozes out of the fundraiser, the person who's trying to do it. And then you just seem like you're desperate and someone doesn't want to give a desperate person money.
Yeah. And and even better than like I think what you said a minute ago is really great, because when you can master those skills, and when you say selling, a lot of people that hear selling and they immediately think, oh, selling just feels slimy or evil, right? But we all sell, no matter what age you are. Think about the best salespeople are kids, right? It's like, have you ever seen a kid ask you for something they want and you say no? And they're like, they don't accept no for an answer. They'll go to all kinds of lengths to make that deal happen, right? Because they want it.
Well, you
But
just told me a story earlier about your daughter selling you
yeah, yeah.
because she wanted Starbucks, right? Tell that
Yep.
story real quick. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
so
cute.
yeah, she's had this tooth that's been loose for like a month, and it's been ready to come out, and it's getting more sore every day. She's leaving it in there, and we're like, honey, you got to get it out because that is irritating your skin right now. We got to get it out. And she just kept like, no, I don't want to do it. And she's very good at like being able to whip up a tear like that. So, what are you gonna do? I can't like force her to do it. And last night we finally said, okay, tonight's the night. And she's like, no, can we wait till tomorrow? I was like, no, no more tomorrows. We got to figure out a way to make it happen tonight. And long story short, I was able to get her to let me tie a little bit of dental floss around her tooth, and I was like, I'll just put it in there like the dentist does, when you go to the dentist, and I put it in there, and I tied it without her knowing. She's like, wait, did you tie a knot? And I was like, yeah, but I just want to see how loose it is. And I'm just kind of gradually getting there. And then an hour goes by of this like negotiation. And during that negotiation, she finally comes and says, Dad, will you take me to Starbucks if I let you pull on the tooth? And I said, I think in my head, I was like, you know what? Just let her win. I was like, of course, I'll take you to Starbucks. And that wasn't the end of it. That was still a little bit longer before she let me pull on it. But I pulled on it, came out, little blood. She's fine. Now she's just thinking about Starbucks. But to your point, she literally was selling me on what she knew I wanted to get the tooth out. And she's like, hey, I'll let you get what you want if you do this. And right, that was her way of selling me on that. And it's not like it was slimy or evil. It's just like, hey, it was almost like a mutual exchange of value, right? That's what selling really is, a mutual exchange of value. As long as you're not using it, you can use it for evil. But if you're doing a real estate deal and you're operating in an ethical manner, whatever you're selling is just effective communication and helping somebody get what they want with maybe a solution that you already have. And I'd say even deeper than that, Benson, my point with all that was it's really based at the foundation on relationships. So you're right. You can't go out, or you shouldn't go out only when you need money and start calling people. And that's the only time they hear from you. Because guess what? they're going to pick up on that real quick. Oh, you know what? He only needs me when he needs money, or she only needs me when she needs money. And that's not what you want to do. You want to create a business. And so when I was talking about like wholesalers, a lot of wholesalers are kind of dabbling in the beginning. And then once they get in and start making some money, it's like, oh, this is real. Now I need to turn it into a real business. And a real business at the foundation of it all, at least those that are sustainable, are really good at building relationships because those relationships
Mhm.
are what last over time. And then when the people that produce for your funds or you go raise money from, they might be in your database, right? But they also might be in somebody else's. You're really good at building the relationship. They're not. Guess who's going to get the money?
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be you, right? Because you got the relationship. You're treating them like a person, not just a bank account, right?
Right. And then people always think, well, why would somebody give me money? I don't have the experience, or I've only done a couple deals. Why would they trust me with their hard-earned cash? And that's a limiting belief, right? Because people who have money understand the value of it. And they're not just going to willy-nilly just dole it out, right? They're going to be very intentional about their due diligence and who they choose to work with, the deals that they invest in. But ultimately, they want a return on their cash, right? And we talked about this last time. Well, why not just leave the money in the stock market or, some other safer sort of investment strategy? But, people who have money also are more astute, right? So they're paying attention. Like there's different rates of return. Yeah, I could leave it in the bank and maybe you earn 1 or 2%, and that's safe. But if I'm going to invest, right, I'm already potentially putting it in an IRA or a 401k. I know there's a better return on that money. Well, what else is out there? They hear about, people investing in crypto and you're making millions, or they're doing, a life insurance policy and they're, getting a return there, and then they're going and pulling it out and investing it and start stacking their return. So they know that there's a better way sometimes. And then it also has to depend on their risk tolerance. Like, how are they really close to retirement? Well, they're going to be less risky. If there's somebody who's brand new, who maybe doesn't have a family, but they're making good cash, they might be a little more risky and willing to do different things. But ultimately, they want a return on their money. And that's the job of the person who's taking the money. That's
Yeah.
their fiduciary responsibility ultimately, to make sure that that money that's given to them gets back with money on top of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If I could sum it up in one word, you said it's trust. It's building that
Mhm.
trust. And the cool part is as soon as you have that trust, those people are going to bring other people to you. So if you want access to more money, you'll get it. All you got to do is treat the people that give you money like they're a person and like it's your money. But even more, maybe I take that back. You got to treat it like, because maybe you're not good with your money, right? Your own money. But you're going to have to learn to be really good with somebody else's money because otherwise it's not going to last very long. And that's the biggest thing is trust. And how you build that trust is you have transparency. And so going back to like, hey, if you're new, there's nothing wrong with being new. Because if you're talking to somebody, you're like, hey, you know what? I'm newer. And you just come out and say, hey, I'm newer, right, in this business. I just want you to know because when we start this relationship, I don't want you to come back later and say, why didn't you tell me you were new? I just want to put it on the table now. But I want to let you know that nobody else is as hungry or as eager as I am to make this work and to make sure you keep coming back to me. And I'm going to make something of this, right? Now, that doesn't mean they may not invest with you, but you know what? You didn't start off on a lie, right? You didn't like let them kind of think something that wasn't true. And so later, if they find out you're new, it's okay because you already handled that. They don't care because you're
Mhm.
you're upfront with them. And smart investors, people that have money, they know that if it's backed by real estate and they have the right contracts in place, they're probably going to be okay, but they still just want to make sure that you're legit. And you being honest with them and being able to have a good conversation and build that relationship is going to be it's going to be worth a whole lot to you and your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you were honest up front, and even if that investor decides not to invest with you early on, if you're doing the process correctly, right? I mean, they're going to be on some distribution list, a newsletter or an email, that keeps people up to speed on the investments. Now, eventually, you're going to start to prove yourself. You're going to close a deal. You're going to raise a certain amount of money to do something. You're going to have a successful exit in something that you were working on, and people will take notice and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I've been watching you." Right? Like I didn't invest with you a year ago because you were newer, and I'm a little risk adverse, but I've
Yep.
been watching you, and I know that you guys just closed that deal. I'm ready to invest with you now.
It happens all the time. Like you'll hear it. Like people are like, hey, you know what? I just had an investor finally invest. He said he's been on my list for a year or 2 years, right? But that real estate operator, wholesaler, whatever you were going to do or whatever you're doing now, they were communicating with them ongoing, like you said, newsletter, email. That's where a lot of people miss it. Again, it goes back to they're raising money only when they need it. You've got to be communicating, bringing these people valuable insight the whole time. Do it by email, do a little newsletter. It doesn't have to be fancy. You can just be talking about what you're doing in your business. And as you start closing deals, like you said, Benson, now you're doing case studies on those deals. You're saying, hey, here's this deal we did. Here's why we chose it. Here's why my company exists, why we focus on this asset class or asset classes or whatever it is. Here's why these people decided to deploy their money with me. And here's what happened. Right. And so you start showcasing those things, and you can't help but over time earn the right to those people to go to the next step when their time is right. Because that's the biggest thing is everybody's got a time. And
Mm-hmm.
while a lot of marketers will say, hey, you know what? My fancy schmancy tactic or strategy gets everybody to invest right away. You and I, and the people that are legit in marketing and understand, the business landscape, is that most people are way over here. So you get a small amount that might be ready now. It takes a little bit of time, not much, for them to go, okay, I've seen enough. Let's talk about how I can deploy some of my money. But most people are over here. They got to know more about you. What do you stand for? And if you're emailing them and you're communicating, the things you stand for better be what's important to them. So you can trust me with your money. Why? How? Answer
Mm-hmm.
those questions, right? Let them know. Don't assume they know. Make it make it so ridiculously simple to understand that a third grader can read your stuff and understand that, hey, this is about trust. This is about transparency. Like if something goes wrong, because not everything goes right in my business and not everything goes 100% the way we plan, but if it doesn't, I'm always making sure my investors are in the know.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not going to wake up one day and find out that their asset burned to the ground from on the news. Like they're going to get a phone
Right.
call when that thing's on fire, so they know what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Those are the things that those investors want to hear. They want to know that you are their person. You are taking care of them.
Yeah. They're ride or die.
That's it. They're ride or die.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always fun to make those calls, right? But darn it, you better do it because
Oh yeah.
it makes or breaks the relationship.
Yeah. And bad words spread fast.
Oh
Right. So when
man.
something bad happens, people seem to find out about it, especially when it involves other people's money. Right. So you got to go into it with the best intention. And the only reason you should be taking people's money is with the intention of giving them that money back with a return. Right.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why you should be doing it. So so we figured out the reasons why people might do it, might need money. And then we figured out some reasons why some people might give money. Now let's talk about that middle ground, right? Where you were just talking about the drip, keeping people on a list and keeping them informed. And then, so let's talk about the funnel. So let's say I just started a fund. I'm going to start fundraising. I don't got a deal yet, right? I don't need money yet, but
Yeah.
I want to start having those conversations with people. And there's some subtleties in the business that we don't have to get into, but there's where you raise money from friends and family, which that discussion is a little bit different than if you're raising money from somebody who is an accredited investor who you have zero relationship with to start. Maybe let's talk about the friends and family first. It's a different level of um, filing with the SEC because you have a pre-existing relationship with them. So they don't have to be accredited. They
Right.
can be, but they don't need to be. And the other distinction there is you can't market that offering. You can't do email and blast stuff out to people you don't know.
Right.
So what are some ways that somebody could raise money from people they know, their friends and their family and their acquaintances?
Man, I would say like the next Thanksgiving dinner, just like have your PowerPoint ready. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. That's what
You
not
get
to.
them into Amway.
Yeah, and then tell them, hey, if you just get three people and they get three people and
Yeah.
I mean, before you know it, you have millions coming in
Yeah.
every month. No, I think you need to also be careful with family and friends because, the whole saying like you should never do business with family and friends. I don't really agree with that. I think you should do family or do business with family and friends who it makes sense to do it with, who have a risk tolerance, right? You need to figure out like what is a risk tolerance because there's always risk. And you need to be upfront about that because the last thing you want is showing up to that Thanksgiving dinner and you did something really screwy with their money. You need to just tell them flat, hey, you know what? I don't know what's going to happen. Here's the deal. Here's how it's laid out. Here's what I think is going to happen, right? If when we start, because you mentioned the scenario is don't have a deal yet, but I'm starting to build a fund or create a fund. Here's what I'm thinking about doing. Here's what I think it's going to look like. Here's my plan. Would this be something you'd be open to or interested in? And that is a very non-threatening way to say, hey, what's your interest level? And then letting them know what the risks are, right? And obviously, if it's secured by real estate, it's done the right way, then the risks are a lot lower, right? Because you mentioned earlier, hey, my money's in the bank, my money's in a IRA or 401k. Well, in my opinion, I think it's more risky to have it all there because there's very little control, right? There's
Mhm.
nothing tangible. You can't go and touch it. But with real estate, you can. You know it's there and you know it's always going to have value. Even if the value drops, there's always some value because somebody's got to have a place to live, somebody's got to have a building to operate out of, whatever. So so for family, getting back to that, I would say, it's like this thing here that people don't use for a phone anymore. This has so many contacts in there that you can start going through and just starting conversations. Simple starting conversations. Tell them what you're thinking about doing. You don't have to ask them for any money. Hey, you know what? I just wanted to let you know this is what I'm doing. And, I don't know if you'd ever be interested in this or not, but just want to let you know it's my new business or whatever. And you're just kind of keeping them in the loop. Because what happens is, and I hear this a lot, and you probably do too, is I hear people talking about all the time how they waited to announce what they were doing until later, until, oh, I already have success. And all these people come up to them and say, man, I wish you'd have told me that earlier,
Yeah.
right? Because I would have been interested, or I may have been interested. So it's like don't neglect them because they're their family and just handle it accordingly, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Delicately.
Yeah, it does. I've heard people too almost say that they try to scare their family away, right? Like saying, listen, this is what I'm doing, but honestly, it's probably not for you. There's a good chance you're going to lose all your money, and just really being honest with them, so honest that they're like scared away. And if they can still get through that filter, then let them in
Yeah.
because at that point it's up to them. But, all the deals are going to have disclosures and that those disclosures are going to be, written by attorneys and it's going to really break down the risk. But if they're friends and family and they're not accredited, then they're not these kinds of people who maybe understand those kinds of disclosures.
Right.
And
Right.
so it's better to kind of nip that in the butt up front and try not to let anybody in who may not understand and just basically you're not going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they understand what's going on, like maybe scare them away. I don't know if that's just too conservative of an approach, right? Because you want money. So you don't want to be like, okay, this isn't for you necessarily, but you still want an extra filter there.
Yeah, well, here's what you got to think about. You need to step into that DeLorean and go about, 10 years in the future and picture what does it look like, the dynamic between you and that person that you had a gut feeling about that maybe you want their money, but you don't know if they're the right person to give you the money. Because we all have those gut feelings. And
Yeah.
sometimes we listen to them, sometimes we ignore them. For me, the more I listen to them, the better off I am. But in the beginning, you might be so hungry that you just want to get the money. So you got to ask yourself, if in 10 years I have to deal with somebody that's super difficult. They're never going to let me let it down if something goes wrong or it doesn't go perfect because it never goes perfect. What does that look like for you? Is it worth your time, energy, all that stuff you have to deal with from that person? Or maybe let that person evolve with you. Look for the ones that are the right fit, work with them for now, Let them see what's happening. Everybody will see what's happening. Talk to them still, but let them kind of find out what's happening as you go. And maybe they'll come along and they'll be further along in their journey of understanding, and there'll be a better time to work with them because timing again is everything. If it's not the right time and you force somebody into something, it never works out very well.
Right. Yeah, it's true. So the friends and family thing, that's where a lot of fundraisers start because they haven't built up the credibility and the track record and the trust with the accredited investors yet. So they start with friends and family, and everyone I talk to says that's a good way to go, right? So that you can start to build up that track record, so that when you are ready to start raising money from somebody you don't know, you can say, okay, here's the deals I've done in the past, right?
Yeah.
And my track record speaks for itself, right? And you don't have to sell as much. Um, so let's say we move past that. We do our first couple deals. Maybe it's a fix and flip, or maybe it's a fund to fund model, and I'm just raising money for other people's deals. But then I get to a point where I've got a little bit going on for me, right? I'm building a bit of a list. How does someone start to enter into this world of raising money from people who don't know you?
Yeah.
And what are the marketing strategies to get people on this list we've mentioned a couple times already?
Yeah. That's a really great question. And it's a question I receive all the time. And so many people they do it very poorly. And it's not always their fault, right? Somebody told them to do whatever, and they're out there doing this crazy thing and essentially just spamming people, right? Which you shouldn't do. You should always think about like, how does this build a relationship? Before we send an email out, how does this affect my relationship? And more importantly, does it bring insight? Because what I'm getting to here is that the best way that you can start to build a relationship with people that don't know you, they aren't your brother, they're not a family member, so they don't have to like you, is to um is to bring valuable insight. So if you're talking to brand new accredited investors, you don't have a track record with them yet, right? But you want to build that relationship, is to bring them insight, education. So educate them on the different things that you're doing. Educate them on who your company is, why it exists, what is the type of person you work with, what's the different, like, why is it whatever real estate method you're specializing in, why did you choose that? Why is it superior to all the others? How is it different? All those kinds of things are things that there's a lot of accredited investors. There's a lot of people that qualify to be credited. They're not like accredited yet. Um, that they don't understand that stuff. So for example, we use LinkedIn a lot. Like I don't even know how much money we've helped raise off of LinkedIn, but it's a lot. And it's because there's a whole bunch of business professionals, a whole bunch of fluent people that are on the platform. And so I know from just conversations we see every day that they find value in people educating them on the differences in real estate investing, because we take for granted that they just know, like, what's the difference between active investing and passive? Some of them don't even know that. So you break it down, like, this is what true passive investing is. This is what active investing is, right? And they don't know that. Like, they could be a dentist and they've got their hands in people's mouths all day. Kind of like I had my hands in Daisy's mouth. Tape one or two that last night. Um, but they're busy, and so they don't have the time to really do all that research oftentimes. So if you can show up to their kind of in their world and teach them, and they can start hearing from you more often, and you're bringing them insight consistently, guess what happens? You're creating value for them. And then there's this like law of reciprocation that starts taking place. So if you're the one
Hmm.
educating them and you're teaching them and you're bringing them value, and now you're building this relationship, when it's their time, right? We keep talking about their time. You're going to be at the top of the list because you kept in front of them. You kept bringing them value. Where people screw up is that they they intend to follow up, they intend to do that, and then they do it like one time. And then they try to move on to somebody else. They do it one time and they forget this is a relationship business. You
Right.
can't get around that. If you do, you're just going to be short-lived. And you and I know people that they're not good operators, right? They're shady. They're out there. and they rely on brand new, brand new, brand new. Well, there's only a certain amount of time before that catches up to you, especially if you're not doing the right things. So my advice to anybody listening to this is go out thinking value first. What kind of value can you bring to them? And value doesn't have to be like monetary. It could be in the beginning, just education. What is
Hmm.
some insight that you could bring them that will help them in their, if they're considering real estate investing or maybe even considering investing more? Some people are in real estate, but they haven't really gotten to do any more investing other than what they're already in. And you could be the person that kind of becomes a catalyst for more of that. You understand? So it's like there's so much opportunity out there right now for people that want to raise money. You just got to show up in the right way.
Yeah. So when you say provide value, right away I think, okay, content, right? If it's education, is it like a little mini video? Is it a blog post? Is it a link to an article that talks about something that you didn't even have any hand in creating? Like those are the things I'm thinking about. So people who are thinking about doing fundraising, they have to think, okay, how do I provide value? Um, and it's going to come down to creating some sort of content, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's that.
content. Yeah. And that's a good point because there's tons and tons of people that just create content for the sake of creating content. They don't ever ask
Mhm.
themselves like, hey, is this going to be insightful to the person watching it or reading it or attending it? And so it just becomes another piece of content in a sea of like useless information that's out there, right? So
Mhm.
you want to ask yourself if you were the investor, what would be important to you? And then talk about those things. It's like I mentioned a bunch of them already, but like transparency and how why people should trust you and what's happening in the market. Is there a deal that you've done that you can kind of showcase? These little things like that, or like a checklist. So one of my favorite things to do is create checklists that educate people on like what are the 10 things you should consider before investing in any multifamily asset, right? Something like that where you're educating them. It seems like it's going to be it's not going to take a bunch of my time, right? It's like, okay, 10 things you should consider, a little checklist. People on LinkedIn love that stuff. So
Mhm.
you get that to them in exchange for their email. Now you've got them on your email list and you continue to bring them value. So the one thing you got to make sure though is that that checklist is valuable. It's not just some random thing. It's like, hey, these are 10 things you need to consider if you're going to invest your money. And then when you do that, you're also, if you do it right, you do what Chet Holmes, the godfather of sales, used to say, you're resetting the buying criteria. So what does that mean? That means that if you're educating them and you're showing them what to look out for, and then they go to somebody else, like let's say they go to a competitor of yours, they're going to be trained to look for those things. If they don't see them, guess what? It's going to be a red flag.
Mhm.
So that's why it's so important for you to educate them. Because if you're the one doing the educating, they're probably coming back to you more times than not when they're ready to invest.
Right. So times have changed, right? Because of the internet and social media and the interconnectivity of the world right now is different than it was in the past. But ultimately, you're just delivering a message of something, right? And before the internet, the way they would raise money would be like you go out and you shake people's hands, right? You go to a networking event,
Yep.
you shake someone's hand, you talk to them, they like you, they ask you what you do. And that's like the fundamental way of like starting those conversations, right? It's just face to face, but it's not scalable, right? Maybe you could find a $10 million check from one person you meet at the gym, maybe, probably not, right? So then you have to think about, okay, so now how do I
Depends on
start
the
to,
gym.
yeah, if it's Denver Athletic Club, you might, um, but probably not Planet Fitness, right? Um,
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
yeah, I work out there. It's perfectly fine. Um, so strategy wise, you're shaking hands, you're talking to people. Those are some ways to raise money. Go to meetups, go to where people are talking about business. If you're trying to raise money for a real estate deal, maybe the best place to raise money isn't when everybody else in the room is also trying to raise money.
Yeah.
So maybe you get out of your comfort zone and you go to just like a general business thing or a chamber of commerce meeting, right?
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of groups on Meetup and Facebook, and so you can find places there. Now, once you exhaust that, or that starts to build, then you start thinking about scaling. Okay, how else can I do it? And then now you're talking about social media. So you're posting things on social media, engaging content, information that people can see, and then they can follow you, right? So they're on your list, but they're not yet, right? Because you don't have their email, their phone number, but they can see your content as long as the algorithm attaches them to you, right? So social media in general, TikTok, LinkedIn, um, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, right? Those are like the main ones.
Yeah.
So you do some stuff there, and you've perfected some processes to help people do this on LinkedIn because it's a business network, right? It makes a lot more sense that people on LinkedIn are to be more receptive to a fundraising scenario than somebody who is on Instagram, a 15-year-old who's looking at dancing videos, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's different strategy. It's like there's overlap with some of people. They have Facebook accounts, but the thing about LinkedIn is that when people are on the platform, they know they're there to network, right? We're there to network. It's like the largest networking event going on 24/7. And there's a lot more people waking up to that now. I've been operating on that platform for over 8 years now. And now you still see like it's still kind of in its infancy, but so many more people are going, okay, we're kind of getting tired of all the restrictions and stuff that are going on Facebook and Instagram, all these, they're limiting all the stuff that you can do. LinkedIn is a completely different platform. And as long as you treat people the right way, like they're a person versus like, bank account or a number, or you're marketing at them instead of communicating with them. I mean, you can generate conversations and leads all day long, with the type of people that you want to interact with. And it's it's a special platform because it's the other part that makes it different is that people trust LinkedIn. Like there's a certain level of trust that they've been
Mhm.
able to build up with all the members that it just feels different for people. And it's not
Yeah.
looked the same way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like LinkedIn. I haven't leveraged it much in the last few years, but I've used it before. I used the sales navigator function before to generate leads for different things. And so it can definitely work. But once we start about talking to people and getting those connections on LinkedIn and getting their information, you got to store it somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So now we're talking about, okay, if we're going to make this thing real and scale it, we need an effective way of storing the information, categorizing it, and then leveraging it to send out messages to multiple people at once, right? So we're talking about a CRM.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, so as you start interacting with people on LinkedIn, there's lots of different strategies, and actually, Benson, you and I are talking about bringing some of these strategies to the audience here, and kind of walking through some of that with them as we work in your account to deploy some different strategies. So we can get into that however you want to, um, but there's so many different strategies that we use to start the conversation, get people to want to exchange their information for whatever we're offering willingly, and then taking those people and putting them into a CRM where then you can create different campaigns that will educate them, it'll engage them, it'll inspire them, it'll, just really bring that insight we've been talking about bringing. Because, at the end of the day, most people don't do that. And the ones that do it, most of them are not doing it very well. So if you look around you, and let's just use, we'll use multifamily because it just comes to mind. A lot of multifamily operators, and I'm sorry if you're watching this and this is you, but all they do is talk about the numbers. It's like you can earn double digit returns. That's all it is about. There's nothing there about like why they exist, what's the story behind the numbers, right? Like there's all these other things that investors want to know. It's like yes, they want to know the numbers, but ultimately they want to know if they could trust you. How are you going to build that
Mhm.
trust? How are you going to build that trust, right? You've got to be intentional about it. And the way you do that is you create content that gives them a peek behind the curtain, who you are, what you're about. Webinars are great. Like I'm not talking about pitch deck webinars. I'm talking about educational.
Mhm.
Teach them something.
Yeah.
teach them something about what's valuable for them, and then tie in all that other stuff. But the more that they hear that, the more you approach it that way, and you can show the numbers, you're going to stand out because the statistics show that half of all businesses stop following up after one attempt.
Hmm.
So if you think about that, if you just two follow-ups, you're better than half the competition out there.
Before we move on, I want to touch on something that you just mentioned about the balance between the trust and the numbers. Because even, and you've seen these deals when someone goes out and they got a really good deal with really good numbers and it sounds too good to be true, they don't invest in those, even though that has better numbers, right? So that proves that it isn't just about the numbers,
Yeah.
because really good numbers will scare off people because they don't trust you yet. But if they trust you and you've got a good deal that has good numbers, that's the perfect synergy there.
Yeah. Some of the most wealthy people in the world, they're happy with, 7, 8%, 9% returns. You know what I
Which
mean?
isn't good that way, which isn't that great, by the way, for people that are listening, right?
Right. So what you need to understand is that there's a lot of savvy people with a lot of money that, it just goes to your point. It's like if it's so big and you're
They
not
don't
there with,
trust it.
yeah, you don't have the trust yet, they don't trust it.
Yeah. So there's this balance there. So you're earning the trust. Yeah, you got to find the deals with good numbers, but they're not going to choose someone else's deal just because it has better numbers if they don't trust the person that gave them that offer. They'd rather work with somebody they trust that has more modest numbers, that has a good track record.
100%.
So this is the things that people learn over time, and a lot of this is subtle, right? This is like the subtleties of the business. But this is what we're talking about right now. Is you're not going to figure this out in a week or a month, right? This is something you're doing over years. So if you get into this, if you're interested in this, you guys, you got to be in it for the long haul. This is going to be something you're going to be building over years. You may get an investment from somebody you started doing content for that learned about you 2 years ago, and then they finally get to a point where the timing makes sense. They've got enough liquidity, and they're like, okay, I'm ready to do this. I'm going to invest with the person I've been following for the last 2 years.
Yep. Yep.
So we got this CRM. We're putting people in there. We're categorizing them. Now we're sending out some content, right? You mentioned email. You mentioned a newsletter. How does somebody get on that list? Like, what's going to convince someone to give you one of their most valuable assets is their email and their phone number? Why would anyone do that?
Yeah, so obviously in this day or day and age, that your email address, your contact information is almost like a currency. Everybody understands that, right? It's worth something. And that's why I said earlier, when you're thinking about something to give away that's insightful, make sure it is insightful. Like if it's like I said, just spitballing, but an example would be like, the 10 things you need to know before investing in your next apartment complex or whatever, commercial building, whatever it is, or residential property. You name it. It's a checklist that suggests that if you give me your contact information, I'm going to give you this almost like a insightful shortcut. I'm looking out for you as a prospect maybe, or as somebody in my audience or in my network. And it's very easy when you have that kind of value proposition and you're leading with that value to get somebody to say, yeah, just send it over here to this email address. And now you've got them in your database. Now it's your job not to screw that up, because immediately what people start to do, most people, is now they start sending all this information about how cool they are and why people should give them the money. It's like you've got to start thinking about value first. What's valuable to them? Build that relationship. And trust me, if you do that and keep at it and you're consistent, you're going to have people that are going to reach out and want to do business with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how the game's rigged. And it just baffles me too, Benson, because a lot of people know this, but they just still don't do it. It's like it's not hard. It's not rocket science. It's just you gotta put a little elbow grease in and a little bit of thought. And then you just got to do
Mm-hmm.
it. Like Nike, just do it, all right? Just do it every day.
Right. But
Think about
track it too, right? Because you don't know if it's working unless you're tracking the numbers. So there's key performance indicators about any list that you can track. And some of the most basic ones are like, okay, how many people are on the list
Yeah.
in general, right? How many people opted in? So the form that you put out there that says, hey, download my free checklist was good enough for them to say yes to that first opt-in, right? They
Yep.
want to be on the list. The next thing is, okay, my first piece of content. Well, what do I send? Well, maybe you figure out it's the top 5 markets to invest in multifamily properties in the US, right? And so
Yep.
it's something you do a little research on, it's insightful enough, you send it out. Well, that might be interesting to one person, but it might not be interesting to another person.
Yep.
And so you got to test those to see what is resonating with the audience. And the best way to do that is to look at email open rates and then clicks. Are they actually clicking the thing in there, a call to action, a link to another article? Um, what are some of the other KPIs that we can leverage to get a better handle on, is this thing that I'm doing even working?
Yeah. There's there's a little bit of a difference to always think about most people, they have regular KPIs like email opens, clicks, whatever it might be. When you're in a business and you're not selling a program, right? You're not selling a widget or whatever it is. You're truly building a relationship with somebody. If they invest with you, they're probably going to invest with you over and over and over and over again if they have a good experience. It's hard to look at the open rates and the clicks and go, I don't know, because really what you need to look at is what's happening on the back end. Like how many of those people are eventually deploying money with you? Because you can have lower numbers up front if you got really great numbers on the back. And so you need to determine like what is the result you're looking for. Now, if we're looking at metrics for, hey, is this lead magnet good? Like a lead magnet is a giveaway, right? Like a valuable giveaway in exchange for their contact information. You could take like the example I gave you and come up with another one, and you could split test and see which one of those resonates. Like you said, which one is resonating with your audience, because you may have multiple different types of avatars in your audience. So different types of people that are interested in different things. So you might find that the first checklist did well with this segment of the population. This one did well with this segment. Another thing that we like to do is if we kind of know the audience, let's say that we're working with dentists and accountants, for example, we might, and this way not to burn your list too. It's like you're not going to send something that's um, that would resonate more with a dentist to an accountant. So in the subject line, you'd say something about that dentists would pick up on, right? That they'd be the ones to open that. Because what people do usually is they do one size fits all. And they'll send out an email. It doesn't matter. They know it doesn't resonate with all their list, which is fine. It's just that if you make them think it does, they're just going to stop opening after some point. Whereas if I
Right.
said, hey, this is for dentists only, this is just a really rough example, but hey, this email's for dentists only. Okay, well, accountants, maybe some will open, but if they do, they're not going to feel like, oh, I was duped. Same thing on their side. And this for accountants only, right? So when you do that, you don't burn the list out. They don't get tired of your messaging because you're kind of calling them out. And we call that angling. So if you don't know what your list is and you kind of got an idea, you can test with different angles, right? Or
Mhm.
maybe it's like you don't know if they're interested in a multifamily or residential or whatever. You can test those things too. You can call those people out. Hey, if you're interested in, only open if you're interested in multifamily real estate. Things like that. So you can kind of
Yeah.
start figuring out who's who. And then, like you said, you can start segmenting those people as they open into different parts of your list so that now you can sort of cater to them individually, more specifically over time, which kind of gets into the weeds, right? Because there's a lot of complication in there when you get into like setting up CRMs and automations and segmenting lists. But at the end of the day, even if you're willing to keep it as simple as possible, and you just do those first couple things like we were just talking about, just sending simple emails that are valuable, um, you're going to be way ahead of most people.
So it's that constant kind of staying in front of them that's the important part, and the consistency,
Yes.
along with making sure that you're delivering what you believe is valuable information, but may not be valuable to everyone. So again, it's that long game, right? So there has to be a strategy there and an understanding too of how it all works, right? Because this is a marketing campaign essentially.
Yeah.
So it's going to require some planning. And so someone who's brand new, and you might be an expert real estate investor. You might be able to go and build a multifamily property with your own two hands, but completely not understand how to work a CRM or
Right.
how to run a marketing campaign, right? They're completely different things. But that's what business is, right? Like a lot of the times the operators are good at one thing, but they're not good at all the things that it takes to run a business, which is at some point you might have to hire some people or, bring in an employee who does marketing, or you might hire a consultant or somebody who can do these things for you so you don't mess it up because, these are valuable. Like once your list is starting to be built, that's your most valuable commodity.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a really good point because I tell people all the time, when we're talking about like LinkedIn specifically, it's like, yes, we're leveraging that platform, but you can kind of think of it like this. LinkedIn is kind of your leased platform. You're leasing it, right? Because you got to pay for Sales Navigator if you want to really dig in, but you're leasing it over there, right? But when you take them from LinkedIn into your database, you own it. And that database is your asset and it can go wherever you go. So if LinkedIn ever changes their terms of service and whatever, you can't market on there anymore, whatever the case may be, you own your database. And your database, if you nurture it and you treat it right and well, will pay you over and over and over forever.
Hmm. Yeah, so many people are so interested in views and clicks and likes on their social media, but even the best marketers in the world know that at some point you want to have a call to action where you're getting those people's information and transfer them to the database. And it depends on the business too, right? Like there's some very successful businesses that just operate solely on social media. But even the marketers I know that have been very successful on social, 5 years down the line, they're like, I should have built an email list, right?
Yeah.
So it's like we're regressing, right? Because all the new stuff, it's like email's still king.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And like it's and lots of changes have happened to email in the past year. Like you can't just set it and forget it anymore. But even though it's more complicated, it's still well worth it because it is the king and it's not going anywhere. And the better that you can understand that now, the better off you'll be later because that is your asset.
And
And
a
you
lot of
take care.
people avoided email for years too because they didn't think they knew how to write copy.
Yeah.
But now with AI, you can write really good copy, but just by giving it the right inputs and feeding it the right information and what your goals are. So people don't have to be as scared of email now because now there's other tools and there's, companies like yours and consultants that can support that.
Yeah.
So I just think that email is going to continue to evolve as one of the most valuable places to build your list.
Absolutely. And you're right. There's some really, really great tools these days. One caveat I'd say with the AI component is I would say just because I'm always looking out for people. So all you out there that are watching this, if you are going to use an AI tool to write copy, make sure that you understand what good copy looks like. Because if you don't know going in what good copy looks like, because honestly, very few people do know what good copy looks like. Just educate yourself on some of that. Look up Gary Halbert, some of the greatest Dan Kennedy, the greatest copywriters that have ever lived. Get an idea of what that is because when it comes back, you want to make sure that you make it, you change it the way you make edits that are appropriate that will make that copy um, get people to do what you're wanting them to do versus
Hmm.
doing what everybody else does. They just put it in, they take it out, they put it in their email and they send it. Because what's happening too, this isn't widely known yet, but the ESPs out there, the internet service providers, they're going to be able to pick up on what's just generated by AI and what is done by a human, and they're going to be able to differentiate that kind of stuff. So you just want to be a little careful as you
Mm,
get into that. But again, that's what you are here for. That's what I'm here for to sort of help guide the people when they are doing these things.
yeah. So let's talk more about LinkedIn, right? Because this is where the places that you guys really excel in in what you and how you help your clients. So we talked about social media in general, right? So you got to be distributing content there. So how is LinkedIn different as far as, using it as a tool to build a list? And what are some ways that people can leverage it?
Yeah, it's such a great platform. It's like you can get one of the best things about LinkedIn is I can go directly to who I want to target and I can start a conversation with them today. And I don't have to go through a gatekeeper. I don't have to pay for an advertisement. I could literally just pull up my LinkedIn account. I could type in if I know somebody's name that I want to connect with, I can go type them in, find them on LinkedIn and reach out. Or if I just have an industry or a type of person that I want to target, like a group, I can go in and target those people. You get right to them because at the end of the day, why do you pay for advertisements? Why does that person pay for advertisements? We all pay for advertisements to get somebody to raise their hand and start a conversation. And it just so happens that we can go right to LinkedIn and do that without any of
Mhm.
that other stuff that you have to do to deal with to get to it. And so um, it's so easy that when I show people some of the stuff, they're like, it can't be that easy. It is that easy. Now it does get complicated when you're trying to run all the different stuff that we run and we teach how to run. But as far as going and finding your people and reaching out to them, it is a no-brainer. It's so simple. It's like literally a third grader can do it. Probably a first grader could do it these days, right? I mean, it's like it's very simple. And people trust the platform. It's a business platform. It's not looked at like Facebook and the other social media platforms. Those platforms are great. Like I'm not knocking them because there's a strategy for all of them. But even if we use Facebook or Instagram or whatever it might be, we always start with LinkedIn because if we can get to our people, two things that can happen. One, we can build a list of those people. But two, now we know if that list is viable, meaning if I'm bringing them into my world and some of those people are converting, now I can kind of prove it out that those are my target audience. And I could take that list over to Facebook and create a similar audience. I could run advertisements to them, knowing that has a better chance to convert, right? I don't have to go and pay for all the data up front like most people have to do, like
Mhm.
to learn the pixel and all that kind of stuff. So overall, as you start evolving in your business and you want to start marketing and doing things outside of LinkedIn, you now get a better ROI across all of it because you know
Right.
your audience. Because 60% of your success is going to be in front of the right audience, right? And 30% is going to be like, what is your offer? How attractive is that offer? And then 10% is like, did they see it on a post? Did they learn about it on a phone call and a piece of content, whatever it is? That's kind of the rule of thumb. So that's why we go to
Mhm.
LinkedIn first because our audience is we can get right to them. And 60% of the set, you're more than halfway there just by that.
And you said, reach our audience, several times. And I just want to make this really clear is that earlier we were talking about our CRM and how we wanted to somehow segment people by tagging them and using different functions inside the CRM to build an audience. LinkedIn already has that. So LinkedIn is a data platform, right? And this is why it's worth so much money is they've aggregated all this data about people in this social network, essentially networking database. And we basically have normalized the function of putting ourselves in buckets. So what's my title, right? What are the tags? Am I an entrepreneur? Am I a professional? Am I an accountant? Am I a marketer? Right. So I'm already putting myself into buckets.
How long have you been in that position? Right. It's like,
Oh my God, it's just unlimited. I mean, there's even like keywords in someone's profile is searchable. But every aspect of LinkedIn was designed to make it searchable so people can find each other. And they have an algorithm behind the scenes that auto matches, right? Like you may know this person, or because you know this person who is an accountant, well, we're going to show you a bunch of accountants now who you might have things in common with, right? So
yeah, they build it
the
for you automatically. It's like they continue to add as those people meet those criteria that you're looking for.
and so these lists that we're talking about building in a CRM, LinkedIn's doing for you. Now you don't own that data, like you said, you're leasing it.
Yeah.
But if you you can actually put them in lists in LinkedIn. There's a functionality there to where you can add people to buckets
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you can
And
send them messages inside of LinkedIn.
100%. So one of the things that we do, like there's so many things that I teach people how to do on LinkedIn. It's like it's like its own little ecosystem. Like, picture it being like your email broadcast system, your website, your main website, your your lead generation. It's all in one. And so what I do is I've kind of just figured out how to use it all and the different, with those different strategies. And there's so many ways you can do that. Um, but yeah, you're absolutely right. And now you take them from there and you put them into your database after you get them to interact with you. So there's some best practices on that, but yeah, you're absolutely right. It's unlike the other ones. You're getting me excited about it because you're like, yeah, you're absolutely right, Benson. Like there's all that stuff you can do. It's just a tremendous opportunity. I will say, just if you go out and you start working on the platform, just don't be like those people that the first message they send to somebody is like 4 or 5 paragraphs talking about how great you are and then ask them for money. Don't do that. This is about a relationship. Let's, ask yourself, if you met that person in a grocery store, would you say that to them? Right? You wouldn't.
No.
So take it, understand you're, like you said earlier, you're running a marathon. Don't worry, you're going to get there. And if you focus on the marathon, you're going to get some quick wins along the way. I mean, I could show you example after example of people that deploy pretty large sums of money in a short period of time for people they don't know just by running some of our strategies. But you have to understand that majority of the time you got to build that relationship. And so if you do that,
Mm-hmm.
take the quick wins when they come, but just focus on the long game and you'll build a list of people that, man, they'll be a true asset instead of just like a bunch of names and email addresses on a sheet.
Right. So let's say I'm convinced that LinkedIn is a good vertical for me to start putting out some content and some messages. And, I figure out, okay, well, you've mentioned dentists a couple times, right? Well, I want to do a quick search for dentists inside of LinkedIn. And now I got all these dentists there.
Yep.
And I'm fundraising. Like, what's the next step? Like, how do I reach out to a dentist that I don't know anything about? They don't know anything about me.
Yep.
What's an example of an engaging message that is interesting enough for them to respond to and not get me blocked?
Yeah, the first thing you need to do is make sure that you optimize your profile for who you're trying to target. So what does that mean? That means you need to take your profile. There's a cover image, a profile photo, a headline area, about section. All that stuff needs to be dialed in. And actually, I don't know if we want to talk about this now, Benson, but like I want to make sure that your audience has the opportunity to get a guide that we have, and maybe somewhere on the page we could put a link or a QR code or something for them to scan to go learn about it. But
Yeah.
essentially, before you do the messaging, you want to make sure that you have the foundational piece, and that is setting up your profile in a way that will speak to that audience you're trying to reach. So if it's dentist, you need to talk about what you do, why it would be important to a dentist. Like think about this. Like they stand all day long, right? They probably end up having back problems, all this kind of stuff, right? How great would it be to be able to have, an alternative investment vehicle bringing them passive income, that kind of stuff, right? Talk about that and there's a a right way to do it, a wrong way to do it. But again, we'll cover some of that later, but you could also get the guide. But back to your question, once you have that foundational piece set up, now you can create that list in Sales Navigator, list a dentist, and you can pull them up by number of years in business. Let's say that you only want to target dentists that likely make $200,000 plus a year, or whatever it might be. Well, you can look and see on average how many years do they have to be in the business to be making that sort of income, and you can put that into the criteria in Sales Navigator. So now you pull up a list of all those people, whatever geography you want, local, or regional, or wherever. Now you can reach out to them by clicking a button and sending them a message. That message is going to be the first interaction they have. This will be like a connection request. So you send that connection request, and what I always like to do is follow the old, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Have you read that book?
Yeah. It's been years, but a
Yeah.
couple times.
Find something good or nice to say about somebody and say it. So it's very easy to do that these days. You can go to Facebook, their Facebook page, you can go on their LinkedIn page. Sometimes they post content or their website. You can compliment them. If you compliment them and you're just like, hey, it'd be great to have you in my network, you're not selling them anything. You're not telling them what your agenda is or what you hope they do. All you're doing is you're saying, hey, I saw you're into this. Looks like we might have some synergies. Would love to have you in my network. Something, right? Just a person, more like a personalized message. When you do that, they're more likely to accept your connection request. And then once they accept it, now you can continue the conversation. So what does that look like? This is where you need to, again, we're at the grocery store. I'm not going to be like, hey, glad we're connected now. Let me just go ahead and tell you about all the great things we do and why you should hire me. It's like, hey, thanks for accepting my connection request. Glad to have you in my network. You might even drop a simple thing like, hey, what's your core focus here over the next couple of months? Right. And some people are like, oh, well, let's just get down to business or whatever. But business will come. This is about building relationships. It's not about building your business yet. It's about building relationships that will build your business. Don't get the two mixed up. Right. So that will not get you banned. Nobody's going to complain about it. And so
they may ignore it if it's not.
Ignore it. Yeah.
Yeah. If it's not intriguing enough for them, but you're not getting in any trouble. And by the way, it may take a few messages to get someone to respond.
Absolutely. Because you know what? Sometimes they're not on LinkedIn very often. Not everybody's on there all the time. But what's cool about LinkedIn is you get an email every time somebody messages. And guess what people do read and open? Their email.
Yep.
So the reason I'm saying this in this way and saying be cool to them is because what's likely to happen when you reach out and ask them to connect, they're going to go to your profile. And guess what happens if they go to your profile and you still got the default cover image and it doesn't look like the lights are on? It doesn't really showcase you in the best light. That's why I said you got to set up that foundation first. But as you're having the conversation, many times those people will go back to your profile. How do you know? Because you'll get a notification that says that person visited your profile again.
So you'll see if a specific person viewed your profile.
Yeah.
Is that available to everyone or just the Sales Navigator people?
It's available to everyone. Well, currently, don't quote because they change these things sometimes to get people to pay for their tool. But it used to be that you could see it. Yeah. So if you can't, then it's probably because you need to get Sales Navigator. But the point with that also is that that's how you get your profile to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, because it's going to explain a lot of what you do. And now your conversation doesn't need to go into all that necessarily unless it comes to that. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, you've already kind of shortcut the process and it's helped you further, get them further along the path, if you will. And yeah, so you want to make sure that you look at that, because you're going to notice as you start paying attention to LinkedIn, when somebody lands on your profile, you're going to get a notification. One of the things that we do is, we've taught people now, when people come to your profile and you see that they land on your profile, if they happen to be somebody that you'd like to be connected with, now you can run a campaign to those people, because they may have just been checking you out and they didn't send you a connection request. But if they landed on your profile and they happen to be somebody that you'd like to have in your connection, a connection, send them a connection request. Nobody thinks about that. We get that conversation and they just landed on your profile. So it's going to be like, you're just kind of
continuing. Yeah, they're checking you out. It's almost like the flirting stage of before you get into dating.
Yeah.
Right. You're just kind of looking at each other, trying to get a sense of this person's going to bring me any value. And if your profile is complete, but also you've been active in LinkedIn, maybe you were posting, articles, or you did a blog post, or you put a video up, or you did a live, like all this content is going to give people more insight into who you are, and they're going to do their due diligence. Even if you don't know it, they're doing their due diligence to see if you're even worth reaching out to. But if you haven't been active at all on LinkedIn And it's just a profile. What it could be the best profile ever, but if they don't see anything else about you,
Yeah.
then that might not be enough for them to accept your friend request.
Well, and remember this too, like people are going to Google your name. So if you meet somebody at an event, at a local meetup or wherever you might be, they're going to look you up online. And remember, LinkedIn is highly respected and they have a certain amount of trust. And just so you know, LinkedIn has what is known as a near perfect Moz domain score. All that means to the layperson is that the search engines love LinkedIn. And so when they type in your name, you know it's going to pop up at the top. If you have a LinkedIn profile, it's going to pop at either in the first position or at least on the first page.
Mm,
So it makes sense to spend some time to optimize your profile because again, people respect LinkedIn. They think if you're a business professional, you better be on there, right? And if you reached out to them on LinkedIn and they go to find you or they pop into your profile, you got to make sure you have the lights on. It looks like you
yeah.
have the lights on in your business, right? You can't be like, "Ooh, there's tumbleweeds going across the, and cobwebs and stuff like that."
Yeah.
There's got to be
It's a good
something.
figure of speech. Make sure that the lights are on, right? It seems obvious, but some people might get ahead of themselves and just start reaching out to people without planning and, not having their profile optimized. But if they're planning ahead, right, now is the time to start putting some stuff up there. So a couple videos, maybe it's a short, maybe it's a podcast you were on, right? And linking that stuff on your profile. So there's more to look at than just what LinkedIn gives you as the base.
Right, right. Yep. Those are all really great ways to put content on the platform. And yeah, I just think in this day and age, you can't ignore LinkedIn anymore because if you do, you're just leaving a bunch of money on the table.
And it could be something as simple as just a post, right? Just a little, two-liner about something that happened. And then if people like it, you can see who liked it.
Yeah.
So this isn't just a viewer. Someone actually took the time to click a button to like a post that you did. And if that person, again, happens to be someone you want to talk to, they're a dentist and whatever, you're like, oh, well, they liked my post.
Yeah.
Well, now I got a reason to reach out. Hey, thanks for liking my post.
100%. I'm glad you said that because I was just going to mention that that's something that people just hardly ever do. And if you just take some time to do that, that will change your business in and of itself.
Hmm. So this is like this whole 360-degree strategy here, where if you're not paying attention, even like the small stuff, like you just said, that could be really important. Because if you're messaging people all day, but you didn't think to go look at a post that you made and saw that someone liked it, well, you could have just messaged 100 people, and that person who liked your post is going to be the only one that would respond.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're engaged, right? So
Hmm.
it's like all of it works, but you have to think outside the box like that because if not, you're just leaving a lot of opportunity on the table.
Yeah. Is there a warm up period for people? Because let's say I'm going to start raising money tomorrow, and I go out and I start, messaging people, and they look and I have zero posts, but all of a sudden I'm posting every day now, right? And they're like, oh, like this person just started posting their profile. It looks like it's brand new. Like,
Yeah.
is that a part of the strategy? Something you have to think about when you're starting this campaign? Is that like you just can't go in a full 100% right out of the gates?
Yeah. So when it comes to content posting, yeah, you could just start off, like a post a week and then start, you can increase the frequency from there, maybe after the first month or so. But especially when it comes to your outreach, you want to definitely be careful when you start. You don't want to go in there and just like, oh, you know what? I'm going to message 100 people a day. You need to start really slow because and I have to tell people that because we have so many different ways that we squeeze the juice out of LinkedIn that if they were to go in and just fire them all off at one time, they just get red flagged because LinkedIn knows that they don't operate that way. But if they would start slowly today and then over the next 30 days, gradually deploy all of it, by the time 30 days gets here, they're full steam and they can do it all because they've built up a natural pattern of behavior.
Hmm.
And so on the content side of things, you can do something similar. It's not as they're not as strict about that as they are about the other, the outreach. But you still want to kind of pace yourself on that just to kind of follow a natural warm up. And then from there, it's like you're good. You'll have so many conversations going that, I mean, your challenge is going to be just keeping up and being
Oh
efficient.
yeah. And then earlier we were talking about KPIs. At this point, this is where the most important KPIs matter, which is appointments,
Yeah.
right? And then checks. How much money is actually coming in the door? But none
Yeah.
of those two KPIs are going to happen at the end of the day if you didn't do all this other stuff right, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this is where um I think it's a good to mention the giveaway, right? The checklists that you wanted. What did you
Yeah.
call it for the profile?
Yeah. So it's a very valuable low cost checklist, or not a checklist, but it's a full guide. So it walks you through
Got it.
every section of your profile, and it teaches you how to do it and set it up the right way so that it's fully optimized. And literally, Benson, I've had multiple people, even one of them comes to mind right now. She changed one thing with her headline and caught the attention of her largest client today. It was like a $4,000 a month client that signed a 12-month contract, all because of one
Wow.
simple tweak. So it's really valuable to say the least. But most importantly, it gives you the opportunity to set up a foundation. That foundation is, it's just like you hear the whole, you want to build a house on sand or on the rock, right? It's like, of course you want to
Hmm.
build your house on a rock. And it allows you to do that.
So we'll put the link to the guide in the show notes so people can go check that out. And then the intention is to create some more content around this, right? Like you're going to be creating a community and a place where people can come and talk about these sorts of things in kind of I don't know, some sort of an environment where there's other like-minded individuals and there's people that have been there and done that. What's this about?
Yeah. So what I've found, so for a long time, um, I've just been working with private clients. And prior to doing that, though, I used to teach people how to do all the stuff that we do, and I stopped doing that to do or stopped doing that so much to work with private clients, more like one to one. But I've only got so much bandwidth for that. So over the past year, I've noticed there's such a huge need for this that I want to bring it out to the general public and give other people the opportunity to learn what we're doing. So I'm going to take everything we're doing. Like, I'm not going to hold anything back. I'm going to teach everything we're doing for the private clients to the people in this community, and they're going to be able to take it and deploy it. We're going to provide them support. Um, it's going to be a very affordable, opportunity for folks to just come in and work with us. It's going to be more like because we're working in a group, but we're going to be able to give feedback, support, all that kind of stuff. And we're going to give them access to a flagship program that we've sold for a lot of money over the years that we're going to give them as part of like the foundational piece of the community. So I didn't want to really sell somebody a course and just like, hey, go figure it out. I wanted to like give them opportunity to get the training and the program, but also get the coaching and support that I know that they'll probably need at some point to go with it. And it's kind of like ethical bribe, if you will, to get them to get out of their own way, to get on LinkedIn, and to give the community a test drive, if you will.
Oh yeah. It's always better to do something big with other people, right? So when you're around other like-minded individuals who are doing the same things you are, have the same goals, aspirations, but also potentially the same limiting beliefs, right? You guys
Yeah,
can support each other through those hard times when you don't know what to post or you don't know what to put in your message. And, that person can be like, come on, you can do this. Like,
yeah,
and then they're helping each other along. And so it's so much more fun, especially when success happens when you're doing it with others than if you're doing this in a silo by yourself out of your basement.
yes, yes, yeah, absolutely. And it is. It's like, one of the biggest things you hear from people is, your life's going to be the result of the five people you hang out with most, right? And there is a tremendous amount of truth about that. Your peer group will either pull you down or lift you up. So what I want people to have is a peer group and mentors like myself that are going to be able to really help them to move the needle and to scale their business to whatever level they want. I mean, we've got lots of experience in that area. So, if you're starting out, or if you've been in business for a long time, we all can learn something. I'm probably going to learn something from each and every member of the community. So I know that I'm humble enough to know that I don't know everything, but it's amazing what happens, and this, the things you can learn from other people that I mean, they may not have as big a business as you, but they might know something that's really great that you don't know that can be a
Mhm.
benefit to you and even others. And so that's what we're aiming to do, while giving them all the support they can need, all the training they need to make LinkedIn the money machine that it can be for them.
So this is primarily focused on LinkedIn marketing strategies.
So it's going to be, so LinkedIn is so kind of in theme with what we're talking about today is LinkedIn, but also I'm bringing other team members and partners of mine into the community, teach them about email marketing, teach them about CRM, teach them about mindset, performance, all that kind of stuff, efficiency. So there's going to be other things in there that are going to be very valuable for folks. But but since we're talking about the fundraising and the capital raising itself and lead generation, I know that's going to be a piece of the pie that everybody wants to kind of put into their business. So I want to include that in there because it is very, very valuable for them. And I think it'll just help them take it to the next level.
Yeah. So just to be clear, if someone is out there thinking this is about fundraising only, it's not. Right? We're talking
Right.
about some marketing strategies and some ways to start to have conversations with people, with LinkedIn being the primary core where those discussions begin to happen, and leveraging the tools and stuff that they've already built in it for the last 20 years. But it could be for something else. It could be for a dentist who's just trying to get more clients.
Oh, you 100%. I'm glad you brought that up because if when somebody asks me, "Hey, what kind of people have you worked with over the years?" and I'm like, "Well, there's been a lot. I mean, you name a service-based business professional, and I've helped them. They've come through my programs, or I've worked with them. Financial advisors, dentists, chiropractors. Um, I mean, I can't even name them all, but real estate agents, real estate investors, and many different niches within those. So the main thing to realize is that, look, if you want to know if what we're doing would be valuable to you, just go to LinkedIn and type in who your ideal customer is or who you'd like to work with. If they're on the platform, what we're doing can help you. And if you think you know what you're doing on LinkedIn, right? Maybe you think you've got it all, kind of dialed in. If you want to learn how to make your email or turn your email environment into and one it produces and gets people to move where you want, that's going to be something that we're also including. So there's going to be a lot of stuff in there. I hate to say that I hate to say it's going to be like all this different stuff because it confuses people. But at the end of the day, it's almost like having a fractional CMO, team of CMOs like working with you in your business, showing exactly what you should do, what you shouldn't do based on actual reality, like what we're doing in our businesses, what we're doing in other businesses, that kind of stuff. So they could plug it right into their businesses and start getting results.
Amazing. So if someone's interested in that community, should they just get the guide? That's kind of the way to start that conversation.
Yeah, I think the best way for them, because yes, they could, and maybe we could talk about, we want to post a link for that, but the guide as far as LinkedIn goes is going to be um, essential for what you're going to do on LinkedIn. But yeah, if you're somebody that falls in that other category, you're like, hey, you know what? Yeah, I'm interested in that, but I want to do these other things you're talking about. We could get them information on that too.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
for
we'll
sure.
discuss, additional links or instructions in the show notes so people can find this because it is the community live yet?
Yeah, so basically what I've done is when I said I've sold this, the LinkedIn training for many thousands of dollars, it's we're gonna use that in the beginning to open it up. So we're gonna let more folks into there, and then we've got plans to bring it elsewhere too. But yeah, it's gonna be a great resource for folks. And yeah, I'm excited to help serve some of the people that look up to you and look to you for information too. Because my biggest thing for this year is I just want to make tremendous impact in as many people's lives as I can. That's doing these podcasts, that's working with folks like you, it's getting people to grow their business efficiently with what's working now in today's crazy, business and marketing landscape, just so they're
Mhm.
not out there feeling overwhelmed. I mean, it's so easy to get distracted and overwhelmed these days with all the different stuff that comes at us. AI itself is like, even myself, if I get too distracted by that, it's overwhelming. There's just so much crazy stuff going on with that. But
Oh yeah.
what I would love to tell people is please don't get wrapped up in that too much, because remember the basic principles of good business, right? It's like building that relationship. And you can't build a relationship wholly with AI. You got to have that human element. The human element, the more you can be genuine and come across as a human in this world that's evolving, the better off you're going to be. And so don't lose that no matter what you're trying to do. You cannot replace that. And if you do, I mean, we got bigger problems, right?
Mhm.
We've all got bigger problems if it ends up going to that, level.
So true. Well, with that, Anthony, thanks again for coming back on. We did get deeper into the weeds, and I know that was the goal of today. So hopefully we were able to provide some people with some additional ideas and get the wheels turning a little bit about what's possible, by leveraging some of these different marketing strategies. And we talked about the reasons why you would do it, and some of the reasons why you shouldn't. And so we're going to talk more about that. But we plan on doing some additional training, you guys. So keep an eye out for more links. Keep an eye out for some of the giveaway, the guide that Anthony's going to put in the show notes for us to get those conversations going, and then also keep an eye out for an invitation to the community itself. So we'll be announcing more about that in the near future. But Anthony, thanks again for being here.
Absolutely. It's an honor. Hope everybody got value, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Awesome. And thanks for listening, everybody. Please like and share this with other people. And hopefully we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks so much for being here.